Welcome into the andTY live stream. We are here once again for Week 15. What is this? Semifinals for most fantasy playoffs, maybe quarterfinals if you have a Week 17 playoff. But either way, it's probably fantasy playoffs time for you. And it's exciting time. Fantasy playoffs, not only that, but in the real NFL, this is really make or break time for most fantasy teams. We've already seen a couple teams this week officially get eliminated from the playoffs. The Broncos just yesterday did. The Raiders are still alive, but they're barely clinging to life. I think they'll need about 10 Christmas miracles to even have a chance. And we finally saw the Buffalo Bills wrap up the AFC East. First time since I think it was 1997, 1996. I don't know. That's kind of sad for me because I always loved the fun fact that the Indianapolis Colts had won the AFC East more recently than the Bills had. Unfortunately, that's not true anymore, but good for the Bills. And I guess I haven't introduced us. Obviously, I'm Price here, and Tones once again joining me. Tones, how are you doing today?
Good, and I actually seen that Colts 1999 banner pop up last night when they did a graphic on the screen during that game, and I was like, you learn something new every day, and I'm like, damn, that's pretty impressive that they won the East more recently than the Bills have. But I'm doing good. It's another day of football. I'm excited. Great Sunday. I'm in one championship game, a couple semifinals games. We already have questions from Twitter and whatnot, so I'm ready to get going, and I'm ready to help these people.
Yeah, I'm ready too. And, maybe I lost a couple of playoff games last week. Just tough sledding mostly for me. Mostly thanks to Justin Herbert. Thanks Justin for not getting back to your form until after I was eliminated from the playoffs. So
thanks Justin for Thursday night. I got you in a couple leagues, buddy. You did great out there. Keep it up.
But yeah, let's just get into it right off the bat. Here for about an hour until a little after 11 o'clock when it's just a little bit before games get started. I just want to bring up some news and notes before we really get into it. Antonio Gibson reportedly will not play today. Another tough day. I'm sure a lot of people were getting really hyped up about him a couple weeks ago when he was finally starting to make himself a name for himself, and then all of a sudden is out and no longer is leading your team, just like he was no longer leading my team. Miami Dolphins leading wide receiver Devontae Parker is expected to play Sunday. That's unfortunate for Lynn Bowden owners. And I also saw earlier today the three wide receivers for the Ravens who were put on the COVID reserve list were taken off and are eligible to play today. And I don't know really what to make of that. I mean, Marquise Brown is their only notable one, but he wasn't really doing much. So that's fine. And really the only other piece of news that I found notable was Matthew Stafford is expected to play today, despite I don't believe he's practiced much, if at all, this week. He was not looking good in their last game. So I would not be banking your hopes on putting Matthew Stafford out there in your lineup.
They probably seen Chase Daniel practice this week, though, and they're probably like, yeah, we'd rather have statue Stafford than Chase Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really blame them for that.
Me neither. And I just want to say a Bucs beat writer just tweeted their expected running back situation today as well. For one last news and tidbit, as Ronald Jones is out today with he was placed not only on the COVID list, but he had surgery earlier in the week as well, a minor surgery, so hopefully he's back next week. But Greg Allman of The Athletic said he expects Leonard Fournette in the primary role, LaShawn McCoy as the third down pass-catching back. Curious to see how they mix rookie Keyshawn Vaughn, who gets touches, hinges on whether Bucs can avoid another early deficit and play with the lead. So it seems like Leonard Fournette and LaShawn McCoy, veterans, are going to be leading the way, then with perhaps a rookie. Bruce Arians actually quoted that Keyshawn Vaughn came on like gangbusters in practice this week, whatever that means. So I think he's high on Keyshawn Vaughn. and obviously he's not too high on Leonard Fournette. And also the Bucks kicker is active today too. He got a false positive for COVID earlier this week. So Ryan Suckup owners can trot Ryan Suckup out there and have a reliable fantasy kicker when they do need one. And we'll start with a question from Twitter here, Pride, for you. PPR League from Pops himself. Mostert, McKissick, or Fournette. PPR, Mostert, McKissick, Fournette. Fournette's in that higher leverage role. As you said, Gibson's out, so McKissick's in that higher leverage role. And now Mostert and Jeff Wilson seem to be split in that backfield. Who would you go with there?
Out of those guys, with Dwayne Haskins back at quarterback for Washington with Alex Smith out, I've really kind of fallen off of the J.D. McKissick hype train. I mean, I was just looking at the 4 games that Dwayne Haskins played early on in the season. J.D. McKissick was really not much of a factor. He really became a factor when Alex Smith was getting in there. And so I think that will change his output. So I think I'm leaning more towards Leonard Fournette in this situation since he's taking on that lead back role for the Buccaneers. And Raheem Mostert, he's been back for a couple of weeks, but I just haven't really seen anything notable about him since then. They've really kind of the 49ers have really taken the place of Los Angeles in having a committee backfield that you can't really trust the running backs in. So I think I would lean Leonard Fournette in that situation, even though he probably won't be getting – I wouldn't expect him to get too many receptions even in a PPR league, but I just think he's going to get the majority of the work out of those guys. And yeah,
what's hard is as you said, Mostert is a guy who splits carries now with Jeff Wilson. Hasn't done much in 3 weeks since he's been back for the 49ers. I think the most points he has was in a PPR format, 10.9. Not ideal. The other 2 games, I think, barely added up to 10 combined. So, 20 points, 3 games for Mostert. That's unlike him. Jeff Wilson's been getting those goal line vulture carries. And as you said, Haskins and McKissick, you got to give McKissick credit. He's shuffled through Kyle Allen, Alex Smith, and Haskins a couple times, but it's just hard to keep your value now. All these quarterbacks have different styles, and we know that Haskins likes Terry McLaurin a lot as they played at Ohio State together, and Haskins isn't, Coach Ron Rivera, a great coach, he kind of has peppered Alex Smith and Kyle Allen to be ball protectors and check it down a lot, whereas to me, Dwayne Haskins throws the ball downfield a lot, so McKissick might not get utilized as much. I'd risk it, no biscuit here. I'd go Lenny F, Leonard Fournette. When he's played and at a high volume earlier this season, he's paid off a couple of games. He had 112 yards and 2 touchdowns pretty much the last game that he was quote-unquote more so of the starting running back, although that was a long time ago. Leonard Fournette and a Buccaneers offense could be a really good play today. Tom Brady likes him. And I was speaking of that Carolina game in week 2. He had 12 carries for 103 and 2 touchdowns. Then against the Giants, he had 15 carries for 52 yards. And then against the Rams on Monday Night Football, he did have a touchdown. Leonard Fournette's had games with 6 receptions a couple times as well. So he has shown signs of life this year. He just has to, shake those twinkle toes. But I like Leonard Fournette out of those 3 today.
Yeah. I am still very interested to see how J.D. McKissick does with Dwayne Haskins, considering
I like McKissick too. I like McKissick too because he's going to catch at least 4 or 5 balls, but it's just tough sledding. Peyton Barber didn't run a lot last week, and McKissick ran a good amount last week, so McKissick could be taking over carries there as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking about, because even though McKissick didn't really show much with Dwayne Haskins the first time around, they also had Antonio Gibson to run the ball with, so it'll be interesting to see just how he plays in the running game this time around. But first question from the YouTube comments, Joseph Ariola asks, Aiyuk, Cooks, Higgins, Gallup, pick 2, half-point PPR. Right off the bat, I have to go Brandon Aiyuk. I love me some Brandon Aiyuk. He's been one of my favorite wide receivers down the stretch recently. And with George Kittle still not active in the lineup and with Deebo Samuel once again leaving with an injury, Ayuk's really going to be their only pass catcher once again. And he's shown just how big he can pay off when he is their only reliable pass catcher. As for the others, though, I think I would lean towards Brandon Cooks as my number 2 there. Even going up against a tough defense in the Indianapolis Colts, will probably be covered by Kenny Moore most of the day. I still like Brandon Cooks breaking off a few big receptions. I would think he would get either 4 or 5 receptions for at least 80 or more yards, possibly even a touchdown to make up for it, whereas I just don't have that same kind of confidence in Michael Gallup being the number 2 or 3 how you slice a guy in Dallas that has had a shoddy pass game for most of the season, and T. Higgins, who just hasn't seen much since Joe Burrow went down. So I'm going with Cooks and Aiyuk in this one.
Yeah, as you said, although that Colts defense has been stout this season against many pass attacks, Cooks is coming back, and I don't know if you watched that Texans-Bears game last week, but it looked like Watson could use a friend. It was kind of like that Will Smith gif in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where Will Smith is looking around the family room and it's just empty and no one's there for him. That's how Deshaun Watson was on offense last week. No more Kenny Stills, no Randall Cobb last week, no Brandon Cooks last week, no Will Fuller last week. I think he had another injury last week as well, either running back or tight end. They were thin. Now at least Brandon Cooks, insert him here. His production is a question mark, but his targets. He might get 50 targets today. I don't know anyone else who's out there. So yeah, I'd go Cooks, and as you said, man, Aiyuk right now, especially with Deebo Samuel being ruled out for the rest of the regular season. I like how they said regular season. Kyle Shanahan giving San Fran fans false hope that there's still playoff chances. But yeah, Aiyuk's been ruled out for quote unquote the regular, or Deebo, not Aiyuk, has been ruled out for the regular season. So I like Aiyuk a lot, as Samuel might have been taking some of his thunder away, but now that he's gone again, Aiyuk is just going to keep tearing it up. Higgins, I'm guessing the rookie Higgins. You never really know if it's Rashard Higgins or T. Higgins, but either way, I'm not a fan of that. And then Gallup. You can't trust that with Andy Dalton and that Cowboys pass offense. I'm going Aiyuk and Cooks.
Yeah. Poor San Fran fans getting false hope. Playoffs in that division? Come on.
Yeah, another little news and note, too, about the Buccaneers' backfield situation. Their starting left tackle is out today as well. He's on the COVID list. Donovan Smith has been ruled out for the game. He officially didn't test positive, but he's been a close contact, and he kind of said, I'm going to take myself out. So that's another thing to take into consideration. Although I think Josh Wells plays a good little backup left tackle, and Pride Tim Crowley actually started off our day with a question from Twitter. Thanks, Tim. He said, I need to start 2 out of 3 non-PPR. David Johnson, Leonard Fournette, Sony Michel. Leonard Fournette might be a guy today in a lot of these questions, but David Johnson, Leonard Fournette, Sony Michel, 2 out of 3, non-PPR.
David Johnson, that's Michel.
I'll start, so the people can keep up with it too. I'll start posting it when we have a Twitter.
Yeah, so David Johnson, Leonard Fournette, Sony Michel. I think I would go with the first two. I don't really like Sony Michel in the latter, especially considering.
I know Harris is out now, but that it's still that New England backfield is always, you never know who Billy B is gonna roll with.
Yeah, even with Leonard Fournette, or what am I saying? Leonard Fournette. Even with Damian Harris out, and I believe Rex Burkhead is also still out, I still don't really trust that. I still don't really trust Sony Michel just being the lead guy, because I remember very, very early on this season, before Damian Harris was completely back from his injury, before he was back from his injury and ready to play, J.J. Taylor, who's like their 5th string running back, was able to get some snaps. And actually do a little bit with those snaps. Obviously, not too much to stay relevant, but it was enough to really steal from Michel's value. And I think Taylor and James White will kind of do that and just kind of take away every little piece of value and really just have some mutually assured destruction, as you might call it, in that New England backfield. And so I think I would lean David Johnson, Leonard Fournette, even though David Johnson is a very uninspired play this season. Really, I think that he can possibly do a bit more. I mean, like we said, Brandon Cooks is really the only guy who's given Deshaun Watson some help out there. So maybe David Johnson will get more involved in the passing game than he has in um, other weeks, really any other week this season. But I think even then, David Johnson gives you a chance of falling over in the end zone for a touchdown more so than I believe Sony Michel has, since teams have really been able to just lock down that Patriots defense. And even if they get close to the goal line, Cam Newton will probably just run it in himself. And so Sony Michel does not have that kind of touchdown upside that I believe David Johnson has. And Leonard Fournette being the lead back in Tampa Bay and just seeing how Tampa Bay's rushing offense has been so far this season, he's the most confident. He's the most confident one that I'm going with, but David Johnson is my number 2 out of those 3.
And even with, like, as you said, you have Harris out, Burkhead out, but it's still the Patriots, it's still Belichick, and you still have James White, and as you said, J.J. Taylor, and then a man I always call the mystery man, Jacob Johnson. He does have 8. He has 8 receptions this year, and he does have a touchdown, so he does take a little bit away from the passing game for those running backs, and expect that to maybe uptick a little more today, obviously, without Damian Harris. So there's still 4 backs out of that New England backfield. You never know what Belichick does, and it's against a good Miami team. So I could see New England being down. I could see them needing to pass a lot. I could see them needing James White involved a lot. Obviously, Johnson plays a lot because he's primarily fullback, but he's in the game a lot. So that leaves Sony Michel needing a close game pretty much to stay in the game, remain in the game. And then even at that, as you said, J.J. Taylor's a mystery man who could play a lot. So then you look at the Texans situation, and Duke Johnson's been ruled out. So with Duke Johnson out, David Johnson is even going to have more of a field day. He might not have a great game, but he's going to get touches at least. And you got to like his touch potential out of the Houston backfield, especially missing a lot of guys. And then Lenny F, without Ronald Jones, and without the Bucs left tackle, Brady might have less time to throw, so they might run the ball more now that their left tackle's out as well. I like Leonard Fournette's chances to at least get in the end zone today. I think he at least gets a touchdown. And if you get a touchdown, you're probably going to get a good amount of yards as well. So I'm leaning Lenny F and David Johnson as well.
Yeah, especially since I just looked it up. And the last time that J.J. Taylor played for the Patriots before they got Damian Harris back was in week 3 against Las Vegas, and he had 11 carries. So that is definitely something that scares me away from Sony Michel there.
Yeah, definitely. That's another example of what we reiterated throughout the segment of how you can't trust Belichick in his backfield.
Yeah. Another question coming in from YouTube. The Chosen Rose asks, who would you start at tight end, Irv Smith Jr. or Cole Kmet? Also, for flex, should I start Jeff Wilson Jr. or Kiki QT? I think for tight end, I'm more comfortable in starting Cole Kmet in this situation. I feel like he's really taking over for Jimmy Graham in that offense, and both these guys are young tight ends who seem to be taking over for their respective elder on their teams. And just looking at what I've been thinking for most of the season, I've been more inclined to start Jimmy Graham than I was to start Kyle Rudolph. So if Cole Kmet kind of takes over that role of Jimmy Graham, I think I would stay with being more comfortable with starting Cole Kmet than Irv Smith Jr. Both these guys I think they've had kind of the same amount of valuable fantasy games so far this season. Irv Smith's, both of his have come recently, whereas Cole Kmet had one recently and then one in like week 5 or something like that. But I'm still more comfortable in Cole Kmet, especially considering the Bears don't really throw it that much to their wide receivers. I mean, Allen Robinson gets his, but Darnell Mooney and Anthony Miller and I think the other one's Riley Ridley just don't get too many pass attempts. So I think Cole Kmet will be the better option to go with. And even then, I think he will get more yards than Irv Smith Jr., even if he can't get into the end zone for a touchdown. Because
I don't know if you, real quick, Pride, I don't know if you've seen the Bucs game last week either, but Irv Smith, although he did do pretty good, Conklin, their other tight end, got a lot of action as well.
Yeah, I did not watch that game very closely, but I just know Irv Smith, he hasn't gotten too many yards this season. He's just really the past couple of weeks he's been lucky with getting those touchdowns. Looking up just quickly, in his best game this season where he had 2 touchdowns against Detroit, those were only on 10 yards. Now, last week, he did do much better with 63 yards through the air and 1 touchdown, but I just trust Cole Kmet more.
Yeah, I think the Bears are going to want to fixate getting their big-time draftee involved. Kyle Rudolph is never a big factor, whether he's in or out for Irv Smith's production, as Kyle didn't have a great year before he went out. He had 1 or 2 big games, but nothing crazy. I don't think Minnesota is going to, be too Irv Smith dependent today with that Bears linebackers core, especially. I think that they, are going to lock down those tight ends. If anything, I think Dalvin Cook and the wide receivers are going to be more of the feast, and the Bears are going to want to get Kmet involved. I'd go Kmet, hope he gets in the end zone. He got in the end zone a few weeks back, and then, like Pride said, way back ago. So hopefully he could do it again. And then Jeff Wilson Jr. or Kiki Kute, that's a tough one. I'd probably go Kiki. You never know what you're going to get. Jeff, the 49ers backfield's a mess right now. At least Kiki's going to be on the field getting snaps, so I'd lean Kiki.
Yeah, I think I'd lean Kiki QT as well. I mean, I'll just look up his stats from last week real quick. Kiki QT, I really thought he was going to blow up last week since he was really the only reliable Texans wide receiver in the lineup, but obviously only 3 catches for 24 yards, did get a touchdown, but I think he better fits that number 2 role behind Brandon Cooks, because, I mean, we saw the week before that, even against a tough defense in Indianapolis, he came away with over 100 yards and 8 receptions there, so I think he's much better fit for that number 2 role, and so I think he's really going to benefit from Brandon Cooks being back. And yeah, we've just seen more recently from Kiki QT than we've seen from Jeff Wilson. That's obviously partially been because Jeff Wilson has dealt with the injury, but he's been back for a couple weeks now and just has been about as notable as Raheem Mostert has.
Yeah, and, even though he hasn't done much, they do have McKinnon in that backfield still that they're paying a lot of money to, so they got to keep him involved. I know he's gotten 0 points the last 2 weeks, but maybe 49ers might realize they need to get McKinnon a little more involved to get their offense going, so you never know who's going to pop out of there. At least, Texans wide receivers depleted. Kiki's going to at least get the plays, and he does have 9 or more points in 3 of his past 4 games, 2 touchdowns over that spread as well, so maybe he's coming on strong.
Yeah. Next question coming in from Twitter from Pops asks, PPR, Mark Andrews or Wayne Gallman? I'm going with Wayne Gallman in this one. He's been the catalyst for the Giants offense. He's just been getting a lot of the work, whereas Mark Andrews, I cannot trust tight ends this season, no matter really what their name is, unless it's Travis Kelce or TJ Hawkinson. I can't really trust them to be consistent, and especially in a offense that has not had the same amount of success as the Ravens have this season. I have to go with Wayne Gallman.
Yeah, especially without Daniel Jones is probably out tonight as well for the Giants, so they're going to be looking to ground and pound like they did against Seattle, where they beat Seattle on the road. Wayne Gallman had 16 carries for 135 yards that day with Colt McCoy at quarterback. So if Colt McCoy is going to be a quarterback again, look for Wayne Gallman to lead the Giants to hopefully a win for them over the Browns. That should be an interesting one. But Mark Andrews, as Pride said, tight ends in general this year are inconsistent. He does have a favorable matchup, but a matchup that could get very ugly. Jacksonville, they might want to get their starters out early if it's a blowout, especially in this type of COVID year with the playoffs coming up. So Andrews might only have a 3-quarter day, whereas Gallman's going to be grounded and pounded 4 quarters deep. I'm going with Gallman. He even had 3 catches for about 20 yards. So in a PPR league, that added about 5 points last week for his value. So you never know what he's going to do. I do like his chances of having a successful game, especially without Daniel Jones.
Yeah, especially with the Ravens going up against Jacksonville, they very well could just run the ball over and over again.
Oh, yeah. They got like 5 running backs.
Yeah, if Jacksonville's not stopping them, why should they stop running it?
Exactly.
Next question coming in from Olivia Scordato. Tua or Jalen Hurts? The 2 Alabama quarterbacks.
The Bama rookies going at it.
Yeah, I think in this situation, I would lean more towards Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts really has surprised me. Last week, I picked him up just as a backup in a couple of my leagues, and honestly, I probably should have played him over some of the guys that I started over him. We saw him throw for 167 yards, which isn't that impressive, but also running for 106 yards is more impressive and really helps him out there. Whereas Tua, on the other hand, he's been up and down, to say the least, so far this season. He hasn't been too impressive. He is just coming off of his first 300-yard game of the season and has thrown and had another 202 touchdown game passing. But really, for the most part, he just has not. He's not wowed me as much as Jalen Hurts has in his first 2 full appearances as a quarterback, not just a gadget guy, but as a quarterback. And so I think in this situation, the Miami Dolphins going up against the New England Patriots, we know Bill Belichick's record against rookie quarterbacks. I'm afraid Tua might have a similar kind of situation that we saw Justin Herbert have a couple weeks ago. And Jalen Hurts going up against the Arizona Cardinals, it's not going to be an easy defensive matchup, but we've seen the Arizona Cardinals. They're kind of one of those middle of the road defenses, at least when it comes to giving up fantasy points to the quarterback. And so I'm much happier playing Jalen Hurts against the Cardinals than I am playing Tua against the Patriots.
Well, hear me out. In 7 games played, 6 games started, TY has only 1 interception thrown, and that was a bad luck one against Kansas City last week, and he's only lost 1 fumble. Tua only has 2 turnovers in 7 games played. Jalen Hurts already has that in a couple games played this season. Jalen Hurts is a guy, he depends on the run. He didn't look too great throwing last week, nor do the Eagles have many guys to throw to. So I think Arizona is going to come out. I think Cliff Kingsbury's smart enough to really come out. In the past 2 weeks here, Tua Claus has been throwing gifts to his wide receivers. As in Week 13 against Cincinnati, he had 300 yards for a touchdown. And last week against Kansas City, he had 320 yards for 2 touchdowns, and he added a touchdown on the ground. I think we're seeing Tua emerge before our eyes as one of these special talents around the NFL. I think Tua is really going to step up today, and I think New England's going to fold. I think Belichick and the boys are done for the year. I think that Tua is going to come out strong and buck that rookie trend against New England. I think Tua is going to help the Dolphins stay alive in that playoff hunt today. Jalen Hurts is going to have a good amount of carries on the ground, so if he does wiggle a deep 1 or 2, it'll pay dividends. But I think Tua's floor is higher than Hurts' floor.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's just, that what is it, 21-5 record that Bill Belichick has against rookie QBs is a little daunting just for me. Next question coming in from
no doubt.
yeah. Next question coming in from Austin McBurney. He asks, half point PPR, start one running back, one flex, Swift, Dobbins, Woods, and Hilton. I'm guessing that's Robert Woods and T.Y. Hilton there as wide receiver options for the flex.
This is a good one.
Yeah, this is a really good one because just considering the options.
Breaking news, Pride. Breaking news. Devontae Parker is inactive.
Ooh.
He has been ruled out.
That is some breaking news because I believe I saw this morning that they were still thinking that Devontae was able to play, and now he's not. That could spell a little trouble for Tua, but I'm also pretty sure that a lot of Lynn Bowden owners are happy now since, you know what, I might have to pick up Lynn Bowden real quickly.
Hold on to more breaking news until we get to this question. Ezekiel Elliott has been ruled out for today's game as well, guys. If you have Ezekiel Elliott in your fantasy lineup for the damn playoffs, not that he's had a great year, but Mike McCarthy likes him. Ezekiel Elliott is inactive today. We are getting late breaking news here with Devontae Parker, Ezekiel Elliott. The more info we get, we're going to keep you guys involved here. But we got inactives coming in out the ass. These two are key players in your lineup. Take him out of your lineups, Devontae Parker and Ezekiel Elliott. This is madness.
And two big late inactives. That's probably gonna stink for anyone who has their alarm set to 12 o'clock and wake up to this kind of news and just can't do anything about it most of the time. But okay, getting back to Austin's question, half point PPR, start one running back, one flex. The difficulty with these running backs here is J.K. Dobbins has really come out strong as of recently, but also with really uncertainty flying around the air. I mean, with those inactives, now I'm second guessing if they're even going to start Matthew Stafford. But I mean, even if they did start him and if they didn't, I would assume that DeAndre Swift would have a similar amount of work on the ground. So I think out of these guys, for the running back, I would lean more towards J.K. Dobbins. I mean, that matchup against Jacksonville, even though Gus Edwards has kind of vultured some touchdowns from J.K. Dobbins in the past couple of games, J.K. Dobbins still getting the rushing yards on the ground. And honestly, against this Jacksonville defense, I think he'll finally get into the end zone again, and probably on a long run. So I think J.K. Dobbins would be my running back to go with there. And as for the flex, T.Y. Hilton's been on a hot streak as of recently. And with the Colts going up against the Houston Texans, I would assume the same could happen here, but also the DeAndre Swift going up against a weak Titans rushing defense. I think those are the two I'm deciding between. I mean, I still like Robert Woods going up against the Jets. I mean, you've got three guys with great matchups going. Well, I guess including all of them, you got four guys with great matchups going into this game. But I think I'm going to ride the hottest hand and go with T.Y. Hilton going up against the Texans secondary. And so I think the two guys I would go with are J.K. Dobbins and T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, I like T.Y. Hilton. He's coming on strong a lot, whereas Woods, they got Cooper Kupp as well, Higbee as well, a couple guys there, Brown out of the backfield, Henderson, and Akers as well, whereas Hilton is kind of more the focal point, at least of recent, in the Colts pass attack, as Pittman Jr. has been put in the backseat for now. So I like Hilton, and then I like Swift a lot. Stafford's banged up. They're going to have to use their running backs a lot. I like Swift and Hilton, but here's something that could help Dobbins. Mark Ingram's officially inactive. I know Mark Ingram hasn't been getting too many carries this year in general, but Mark Ingram's officially inactive, Pride. I know I'd still go Swift and Hilton. But does that change your mind at all? And also another breaking news, inactive Mike Gesicki's out for this game. We just got inactives coming in that are going to affect a lot of fantasy lineups between Ingram, Gesicki, and Jakeem Grant for the Dolphins. So all of a sudden, if Lynn Bowden Jr. is running back eligible, he might be the Dolphins' number one wide receiver today. As Gesicki's out, Parker's out, Grant's out. Who the hell are they going to have?
I cannot tell you. I guess it's just going to be Lynn Bowden and Malcolm Perry's show for that day, for this day. But yeah, I think with Mark Ingram out, he's still, when he has played, he's really kind of been eased out of their lead running back role throughout the season. J.K. Dobbins is really taking over. So I'm staying with J.K. Dobbins as my running back to go with out of those guys. And yeah, honestly, out of those guys, I really like all of their matchups. Each of them have favorable matchups. Either one of them could have a big blowout day, but I think the guys for me who have the two best opportunities to are J.K. Dobbins and T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, I like Dobbins as well because, against Jacksonville, it's very favorable. I don't know. I just think Swift is going to be involved. I think he's been a really good piece to that Lions backfield when he's been in. And I think with Stafford out, they might rely on Swift. But, yeah, Dobbins, you definitely can't go wrong. Both of these rookie running backs are probably going to be pretty good in the NFL for years to come.
Yeah. Next question coming in from Godwin or Deontay Johnson, PPR, Mr. Butterfingers spokesperson.
It saddens me that this is even a question nowadays.
I think I'm going to have to go with Chris Godwin in this one. I mean, I've been kind of on a slow decline on the Pittsburgh wide receivers, and I just don't think I can trust them anymore. Even going up against a not so good defense in the Cincinnati Bengals this week on Monday night, Deontay Johnson, he's just not looked the same. I mean, he's had the past couple of games, he's been getting some targets, except for really last game where he sat out a lot after having two key drops. But he's just not always paid it off. Whereas Chris Godwin, I mean, he's not broken 100 receiving yards so far this season. But going up against the Atlanta Falcons, I do expect him to break that kind of trend. And yeah, even though both these guys have disappointed me somewhat this season, I think in this situation I'm still more willing to trust Chris Godwin than I am in trusting Deontay Johnson, because if he comes out and drops two again and spends most, if not all of the second quarter on the bench again, I don't like that. That is the opposite of Kirk Cousins to me.
Yeah, and you know who's a free agent at year's end? Chris Godwin. So he's probably going to want to start going crazy and try and earn himself a big payday in Tampa, hopefully, but it could be anywhere. And Godwin at least catches the ball when it's thrown his way. I think Tom Brady against this depleted Falcons secondary is going to try and get his pass attack really in gear today, a couple weeks before the playoffs. It's time to start clicking. I'd expect guys like Godwin and Evans, two guys who have been in Tampa a while, two of the originals, to really get going today, really get involved today. I think these two are going to be in for typical Godwin Evans type performances that we were used to seeing in years prior, although Evans still has 11 touchdowns this year, so that's pretty impressive. But Godwin's going to want to earn his pay. Maybe Tampa's been keeping him a little secretive. He's been banged up on and off this year. Maybe they want to get a couple bucks off his contract next year. You never know what it is, but I do think Chris Godwin's going to come out fired up against this Atlanta depleted secondary. And meanwhile, Deontay Johnson just hasn't done a lot of catching lately, especially with Will Ferrell at quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback. You can mistake the two nowadays. And Ben Roethlisberger actually said the other day, oh, maybe if I can't throw anymore, I should retire. Well, if someone who's throwing you the football says that, that's probably not a great sign. So I lean with Chris Godwin.
Yes, please Please retire Ben Roethlisberger. Please just do it for me. Next question coming from Lucius Vrenas, 44, asks, pick one wide receiver, T.Y. Hilton, Chris Godwin, or Thailand. I mean, Adam Thielen. Need high ceiling, racer close playoff matchup. Thanks in advance. Well, I think that will kind of change my thoughts on this. If you need a higher ceiling, obviously we kind of already talked about T.Y. Hilton going up with a great matchup going up against the Houston Texans. If you need a high ceiling, I don't really trust Chris Godwin to provide that high ceiling. I mean, just from what we've seen so far this season, I don't really trust that. Whereas the Vikings going up against the Bears, I think that could be. I think Adam Thielen will still be good in that matchup. I'm just worried about that Chicago secondary. They've got Kyle Fuller, Eddie Jackson, a pretty decent secondary going there, and so I feel like maybe only either Adam Thielen or Justin Jefferson will have a good game, not both of them, and I'm afraid that Justin Jefferson might take that good game. So I think I'm going to have to lean T.Y. Hilton out of these guys. He's been on a tear as of recent and going up against a Texans team that's made a lot of wide receivers look very good this season, including T.Y. Hilton himself. I think I got to go with him.
Yeah, he just burnt this Texans secondary a couple weeks back for 110 yards and 8 receptions and a touchdown. And, his past 3 games, he was 4 for 81 and a touchdown, 8 for 110 and a touchdown, 5 for 86 and 2 touchdowns. Maybe Uncle Old Philip is finding old reliable TY, and maybe they're figuring things out in these last 3 games, 2 which are very favorable if you go into Week 17. They play Jacksonville Week 17 and Houston this week. Their only unfavorable one is at Pittsburgh next week, but TY suddenly emerges as a guy who could provide high ceiling potential in 2 out of the next 3 weeks. Whereas Godwin, I think his floor is the highest of these guys this week. I think, Godwin will probably get you at least 10 in a PPR format especially. But at the end of the day, his touchdown rate is probably the least likely, which makes him a hard play out of these 3 if you're looking for high ceiling. Godwin's floor is the highest in my opinion, but his ceiling is probably the lowest. So then you look at Hilton or Thielen. Thielen's ceiling or floor is probably the second highest, and I just go Hilton. Boom or bust with TY. He's boomed or bust all year pretty much, and lately it's been boom. Hopefully he can keep it up for you. Luscious Varanus 44.
Yeah. Next question coming in from Garrett Yonker. He says, good morning, guys. Good morning to you, Garrett. Standard League, do I flex Justin Jefferson, J.K. Dobbins, or Swift? Also in a 2 QB league where I have Mahomes, do I play Trubisky or banged up Stafford? Thanks. For your first question in your flex, I think you have to, even though I like all of those guys, I really want to say Justin Jefferson, but like I kind of said, that Bears defense is a little tougher in the secondary. J.K. Dobbins and DeAndre Swift, though, I still think you got to go with the possible rookie of the year in Justin Jefferson. I mean, like I said, one of the I believe either him or Thielen are going to have a really good fantasy day, and I'm leaning more towards Justin Jefferson to kind of keep up this great pace that he's been on to be the second best rookie wide receiver in Vikings history. Not bad company to be with when you consider Randy Moss is number 1, but yeah, I think I trust Justin Jefferson more, even though I believe J.K. Dobbins does has a great matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Will probably run all day long for over 100 yards, and DeAndre Swift also has a pretty good matchup against the Tennessee Titans. But it's hard. But I feel like Justin Jefferson is just one of those guys where if you don't play him, you're going to be kicking yourself nonetheless. And so I feel like even if you play him and, even if J.K. Dobbins or DeAndre Swift have like a little bit better of a game, I believe Justin Jefferson is still going to have a game that you're not going to be disappointed in. And so I feel like you just have to, whereas J.K. Dobbins, they may be like, J.K., just take the day off and just run Gus Edwards for 20 times and stuff. Or DeAndre Swift just, for some reason, gets clapped by that Tennessee defense. I feel like you kind of have to play Justin Jefferson in this one. As for your 2 QB question, I think you have to play Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, Matthew Stafford is banged up. He is expected to play with the recent activities and inactives. I'm not sure if that will stay until game time. And Mitchell Trubisky, even though he is Mitchell Trubisky, he has played pretty decent the past couple of games, at least when it comes to fantasy. I know a lot of Bears fans might be moaning that a lot of his touchdowns came in garbage time, but that doesn't matter to us. He over the past 3 games, he's thrown for 7 touchdowns, and he's thrown for over 2, and he's thrown for at least 242 yards in each of those games. He's not looked half bad, and I'd much prefer him as my number 2 QB than I would a guy who I'm afraid might not play, or might even be replaced by Chase Daniels after he plays the first drive and is like, yeah, I can't walk.
Yeah, I'd rather play Trubisky just because you know that Trubisky, barring injury, is actually, or ejection, is going to play the whole game. Whereas you said Stafford is probably 1 or 2 big hits away from the Lions saying, we're paying this guy a lot of money. At what point do we just keep him on the bench until next season, out of playoff contention, and let Chase Daniel be the ragdoll? I'd go with Trubisky there in terms of just, playing leverage. In a 2 QB league, you just look for someone who's going to play more snaps and has a higher ceiling in that QB2 spot. And then in the other spot, I love Justin Jefferson this week, but I'm going to stick with DeAndre Swift, and my reasoning is I think that, Stafford might not last long, where he's going to have to check down a lot, run a lot. I think Swift could perhaps maybe sneak his way in the end zone, although Justin Jefferson, as you said, he's a guy that when he's on your bench, man, you just hate the feeling that he's on your bench because you know what he could do. He could break out for that 100-yard, 2-touchdown game. It's really a tough call, I guess. If you're looking for more potential, go with Justin Jefferson. If you're being more conservative, I'd maybe roll with Swift. And a little bit more fantasy and quarterback news here. Jameis Winston has just been placed on the COVID-19 list as well. He was named the Saints' backup to Drew Brees today. So Taysom Hill fans, Taysom will still probably get a good amount of gadget plays in. I don't think he's no longer eligible for anywhere else other than quarterback. But interesting news out of NOLA with Jameis Winston, according to Ian Rappaport, being ruled out and put on the COVID-19 list.
Yeah. Next question coming in from Alex Laskin. He asks, Raheem Mostert, Kareem Hunt, Deontay Johnson, PPR League. Out of each of those guys, kind of had our bellyache. I've kind of talked about my belly aching today about Deontay Johnson not being able to catch a ball and Raheem Mostert being in a backfield that right now does not have a clear number 1. Kareem Hunt, as of recently, has been able to find the end zone again last week, but still not getting the amount, and also was able to find the end zone passing him. That was really his first week in a while where I've really been happy with him. In weeks past, it's really been ever since his week 10 100-yard game against Houston with Nick Chubb being back. He has not seen nearly the amount of rushing work as he was when he was gone, obviously. And also his passing work for some reason also has really dropped off. I hope that their game against Baltimore kind of pushes him in a direction where they will be using him more in the passing game again. He had his most receptions on the season, as well as his most targets, and obviously along with those most yards, just the best game so far receiving for him. And going up against the Giants, I think he will have another decent week ahead of him going forward. Raheem Mostert's my least favorite out of these guys. I still like the breakout potential of Deontay Johnson. So deciding between him and Kareem Hunt,
I like Kareem Hunt. I think he has the most potential here for sure. As you said, he was stumbling a little bit with Chubb coming back, but last week he did have a pretty nice little game. They finally used him again. Mostert and Deontay, we bellyached, so I just go with Kareem Hunt. Deontay Johnson is a little untrustable right now in that Pittsburgh passing game, and Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Jarrett McKinnon, yada, 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 in that 49ers backfield. You never know who's going to pop out of there. I'm going with Kareem Hunt. At least the Browns against this Giants team should probably get both their running backs involved a good little bit. I think Kareem Hunt does his role. I think he does his part. Either he's going to get a lot of receptions or in the end zone. I'm liking Kareem Hunt.
Yeah. I think Hunt's who I'm going to go with as well. Next question coming in from Jack. He asks, play 2 of 4, half PPR, J.D. McKissic, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr., or Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard now going to be the number 1 running back for the Cowboys with Ezekiel Elliott being ruled out. I think I will want to go with Tony Pollard as one of them here. I mean, I wanted to play. I mean, I feel like you were kind of saying, even though it is the semifinals or quarterfinals for most people, and even though Ezekiel Elliott has been kind of disappointing most of the season, I was still going to play him just because it's Ezekiel Elliott. And even with a tough 49ers defense, I still feel like you have to play him. And the other guys, though, give me some pause just because, I mean, we've talked about how it's hard to trust Raheem Mostert or Jeff Wilson. So I think I might go with J.D. McKissic just to see how he does with Dwayne Haskins as his quarterback, with also Antonio Gibson continuing to be out, see if he gets more work in the rushing game, since obviously Peyton Barber's it's got to be like maybe 1.7 yards per carry for Peyton Barber or something like that.
It's down there.
Yeah, it's down there. So I'm interested to see how they'll use him in the rushing game, as well as if he continues to get the same, or at least close to the same amount of work that he gets in the passing game. So I'm going with Pollard and McKissic.
I'm going with Pollard and McKissic as well. Pollard's going to get a lot of snaps. He's done pretty good in a reserve role this year for the Cowboys, so I'm interested to see if he could continue that success in the starting role without Ezekiel Elliott. So I feel like Pollard's definitely going to get the most playing time out of this group, obviously, and for that sheer reason, you could feel comfortable trotting him out as a fantasy running back this week for sure. And then Mostert and Wilson, you just can't choose between those two. I mean, whatever one you end up playing, the other one will probably have the better game. That's just how fantasy is cruel to us. I'm going with McKissic. At least, McKissic is going to be the lead back of the Washington football team. He's going to get the most touches out of that backfield. I'd be very surprised if somehow Peyton Barber had more snaps than him or whatnot. I'd go with McKissic and Pollard with pride as well.
Yeah. Next question coming in from Stefan X. He asks, Brandon Aiyuk or Adam Thielen, PPR League. I got to go with Brandon Aiyuk. I love Brandon Aiyuk, even though Adam Thielen's top 10 wide receiver in fantasy so far this season, especially in PPR leagues. I think that Brandon Aiyuk is the guy to go with today. Like we said, he's really the only reliable pass catcher that the 49ers have. Behind him, probably their number 2 option is going to be Jordan Reed, or possibly even Jerick McKinnon out of the backfield. So I really like Brandon Aiyuk. He's also shown it in the past couple weeks. Last week, he had 10 receptions. Most receptions he had so far this season. Also in, I believe, 3 of the past 4 weeks, he's had over 10 targets. So he's getting the looks. He's making the catches. He's getting a lot of yards on top of that. Because also in that time, I want to say it's out of the past 5 weeks, he's had games where he's either had a touchdown or 100 yards. He's never had both. He could possibly get both today against Dallas, but he's just a really safe bet to go with, and I just really like him down the stretch.
Yeah, I like this is a tough one, but I like Aiyuk against a more favorable matchup today as well. Especially without Debo Samuel, Thielen always has Jefferson, Cook, and others to compete with, whereas Kittle and Debo being out pretty much open up the door for Aiyuk. I'm going with Aiyuk, the rookie. I think that he proposes a bigger point potential here than Adam Thielen does. Although Thielen's a hell of a wide receiver and he's a start in most leagues, but with this particular question, I'd probably lead with Brandon Aiyuk.
Yeah, I like him so much down the stretch. He's one of my he was probably my favorite guy that I traded for this season, and he's really paid off. Chris Lopez with the next question. He asked Terry McLaurin or Corey Davis. Man, what a world 2020 is.
Yeah, right.
Asking between one of the best rookies last year and Corey Davis. I know some people have pause over Terry McLaurin with Dwayne Haskins back at quarterback, but honestly, Terry McLaurin was really good at the start of the season with Dwayne Haskins as his quarterback. If you take a look back at those first 4 games of the season, Terry McLaurin had 5 receptions for 61 yards. Not really the best day, but week 2, he had 7 receptions for 125 yards and a touchdown. Week 3, he had 4 receptions for 83 yards. And week 4, he had 10 receptions for 118 yards. Those were the 4 games that Dwayne Haskins started. I really like those 4 games, especially the 100-yard games. Whereas Corey Davis, he's been good for most of the season, but he's also had some very down games. We know in week 8 he had a great 128-yard gain and a touchdown. Sorry, I had to clear my throat there. And week after that, he gave you an offer. Week 13 against Cleveland, just a couple weeks ago, he had 11 receptions for 182 yards and a touchdown. And last week, he had 3 receptions for 34 yards. A very long, he also had a fumble, which also really hit that. But he's so far this season been one of the biggest boom or bust kind of guys. And with the Tennessee Titans taking on who was it? I was just thinking about them taking on the Lions. I think he does have the potential for another big game, but also with Washington taking on Seattle's been one of the worst defenses so far this season. They've picked it up a little bit in the past couple of weeks, but I think in the end, Terry McLaurin's going to have another great game, which he hasn't had in a little bit. Alex Smith has really kind of capped his potential, but I think with Dwayne Haskins back there, Terry McLaurin's going to have another 100-plus yard game and possibly find the end zone again.
Yeah, I'd roll with Terry McLaurin. I think the Ohio State connection ends up pretty well today. Corey Davis, mildly inconsistent. Stick with Terry here with Haskins back at the helm. I think he has a bigger shot at success than Corey Davis.
Yeah. Chris Lopez also asked J.D. McKissic or Tony Pollard. Kind of talking about this a little earlier, but I'm still more comfortable with starting Tony Pollard. He's going to be the lead back. If he takes on the role that we saw Ezekiel Elliott taking on, then I have full confidence in him playing better. Whereas J.D. McKissic, I'm very interested in how he'll be used this week, but I don't have too much confidence in him being better than Tony Pollard. So I would roll with Pollard for that one.
Yeah, I'd roll with Pollard as well. Pollard's a prime back in Dallas. McKissic, he's still probably the touches leader out of Washington football team, but Peyton Barber is there, and they do use him as a vulture kind of. So Pollard's touchdown potential is higher as well. I'm going Tony Pollard.
And looks like we might be our final question from It's Fragger. He asked Brandon Aiyuk, Adam Thielen, Mike Evans, pick 2. So I'm going to stick on the train of going Brandon Aiyuk. Love me some Brandon Aiyuk out of these guys. And then out of the next 2, Adam Thielen and Mike Evans. Adam Thielen, Obviously, he has a kind of a tough matchup against the Chicago Bears, and Mike Evans going up against the Atlanta Falcons, more of a favorable matchup. Mike Evans also been one of, I want to say that he leads. Well, I think you'd probably know. Does he lead the NFL in touchdown passes right now, or touchdown receptions?
Yes,
Yeah.
with 11.
Yeah, I know he's gotten a touchdown pass almost every game, and I think he's
Well,
going to do the same.
actually, I think now Tyreek might have passed him last week, actually, and I think Thielen might have too. Heading into last week, he was one, but he didn't get any. So now I think he's tied for second or third.
Yeah, it's so tough because Mike Evans and Adam Thielen have been top 12 receivers so far this season. Um, Depending on if it's half PPR or full PPR or just standard. If it's a standard league, I think I might lean towards Mike Evans in that. If it's half PPR or full PPR, think I might go with I think I might go with Adam Thielen since he's seemed to get more receptions than Mike Evans. Mike Evans has topped out at 7 receptions twice this season, whereas Adam Thielen in 2 of his past 3 weeks has had 8 receptions in those games. And so I think I might lean more towards Adam Thielen in any kind of point per reception league, whereas if it was a standard league, I think I would go with Mike Evans.
Yeah, I agree with that. PPR, I'd probably lean Thielen. On PPR, I'd probably go Evans, and then I'd bundle Aiyuk with that as well. I keep saying with Debo and Kittle out, I like Aiyuk, so I'd lean with Evans in standard and Thielen in PPR.
Yeah. As Fragger said, 3 of the Bears CVs are out in this game. Looking at it, doesn't look to be that bad for them. I mean, they will be missing rookie Jalen Johnson, so that's kind of tough. But I think Kyle Fuller is the guy who's probably going to be covering Adam Thielen for most of the game. I think they would have put in Jalen Johnson on Justin Jefferson, so that's more in his favor. And the other 3 CVs, not really worth talking about. I mean, Buster Screen and Deion Bush, Buster Screen and actually Deion Bush is safety. I think Artie Burns is the other one. Yeah, not really guys who I would scare for. Whereas I think the only cornerback who would affect this matchup was probably going to be covering Justin Jefferson anyway. I might also add to Adam Thielen because they might have Kyle Fuller split time between Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, but I don't know. My thoughts are still the same on Thielen.
Yep, same here.
Yeah, controversial as pick 2, T.Y. Hilton, David Johnson, Antonio Brown. I almost said Antonio Gibson. Antonio Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, Jarvis Landry, Tony Pollard, or Savannah Ahmed. I think out of these guys, I'm going with T.Y. Hilton, hoping he stays on his streak like we've kind of talked about. And as for the number 2, I'm kind of deciding between Tony Pollard and Jarvis Landry in this one. I think in the end I will go with Jarvis Landry, even though he does have kind of a tough one-on-one matchup, considering James Bradbury is probably going to be the cornerback going up against him for the Giants. I still think I'm going to like Jarvis Landry in that matchup more than I like Tony Pollard, even though I think Tony Pollard will still get the same kind of workload as Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think he will be as effective as Zeke, especially going up against a tough run-stopping defense in the 49ers. So I think I'm going to go with the 2 wide receivers, TY and Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, this is a good last question. It's a deep one, detailed one. This is tough. I'm going with TY. We've endorsed, I don't know, though. Jarvis Landry and Pollard are decent options too. Tough. I'm going with TY.
I didn't know that. That makes my decision even easier. Yeah, still going with TY and Jarvis Landry then.
Yeah, I'm going with TY and Landry as well.
Yeah, I don't always keep up with defensive inactives and that stuff. And so thank you for that. Yeah, TY and Landry should be really good plays for you. I'm going to answer the last couple of questions quickly. We are a little past time. Tom Dunn asked, pick 2, Gurley, Gus Bus, Tony Pollard, or Miami running back.
Don't if you need to say Miami's running back and not have a name, I don't think that's a question.
Yeah, I mean, Savon Ahmed is looking to be the number 1 running back. Bowden wasn't. I don't know why people keep thinking Bowden's going to be the running back. He was mostly used as a slot receiver last week. I guess just looking at the fantasy numbers, he is still ranked as a running back in fantasy. But as for the pick 2, I'm going with Tony Pollard. We've kind of talked about him. As for reasons. As for the other 2 that I'm considering, like I said, I'm not considering Savon Ahmed right now going up against the Patriots. Todd Gurley and Gus Edwards. I think I'm going to lean more towards Gus Edwards in this one. He has a higher touchdown probability going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that J.K. Dobbins is going to have a good day rushing, but Gus Edwards has been able to get a lot of closer red zone work, not necessarily goal line, but red zone work, and has been able to find the end zone. Whereas Todd Gurley, he's been one of the biggest letdowns in the second half of the season at the running back position. He was looking really decent the first half of the season, but he's really come down and is not even worth starting at this point. Even in full PPR leagues, he hasn't gotten that many receptions, whereas Pollard and Edwards, I think, just give you a higher floor. Edwards gives you a higher touchdown floor, and Pollard just is going to get more work because sometimes they'll just take Gurley off the field, just give him and his knees some rest.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd go with Pollard and Gus.
Yeah. And this will be the final question from C. Chav. He asks, Dalton Schultz or Jonnu Smith or P.U. or Smith. Already have Jefferson Vikes in my lineups. I think I would roll with Jonnu Smith. He has not been notable too much in the past couple weeks, especially with the Vikings for some reason loving using their backup tight ends a lot with Ferkser and I can't remember the other guy's name, but Ferkser and the other guy. But I think this week going up against the Detroit Lions, he has a chance to get back in the end zone. He has a chance to be used more by the Titans, whereas the Cowboys, I don't really like Dalton Schultz going up against the San Francisco 49ers. And Irv Smith, like you said, you already have the Vikes in your lineups, and he really has been really relying on touchdowns, whereas Jonnu Smith, he's one of the guys who, I mean, every tight end is reliant on touchdowns, but Jonnu Smith is one of the only guys I believe can also give you a nice receiving floor. It just really depends on how the Titans use him. I mean, tight end all season has been very hit or miss, but I think Jonnu Smith might be your best option out of these 3 guys. And yeah, that's who I'm going with. Well,
I agree.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for the show this week. We are less than an hour away from kickoff for Sunday's first slate of games. Not as many games as usual since there's already been 3 that have been played, but we're getting near the end of the season. Tones, I hope you have a good semifinal weekend. I hope I can win my the only money league semifinal game that I have left. And yeah. Any last word?
Good luck to you. Good luck to you, man. Good luck to all those out there battling. Keep fighting, and we'll be back and hopefully helping you out in your championship next week.
Yep. That's going to do it. Hope you guys win.